My ungrateful parents refused to buy me acne cream, so 10 years later I refused to pay for my mom's expensive surgery. My parents and I grew up very poor. I was sent to a public school, and most of the days getting a nice hot meal was a treat. My parents would never take me to eat out with them because it was apparently too expensive for them to pay for me as well as their dinner. I would never get presents like all my other friends on Christmas or any other holidays. The only exception was that on my birthday we would be able to go out to either McDonald's or Chipotle. This led me to not have much of a social life because whenever my friends wanted to go out they went to expensive activities, and back then I would envy their go-karting, arcade, Instagram posts, or whenever they would want to hang out it could never be at my tiny place because I was embarrassed at them seeing the place I call home. I honestly started to resent my parents so much for this, but it was probably the sole cause of my later success in life. During my second year of high school, I would frequently eat lunches in the bathroom stalls because no one would let me sit with them, and I always tried to sit in the farthest back chairs in class. And at home, I had an abundance of time on my hands to spend doing my weird geeky hobbies like coding. I was pretty used to this lifestyle and got pretty content with it. Sure, occasionally I did want to yell at my dad for using the little money he made on alcohol, but over time I started caring less and less. That's until during the start of my third year in high school, where a new boy entered our school. He was an exchange student from France. He was tall and very handsome with blonde hair. He didn't speak much English, so he was assigned a person to help guide him around the school. That person was me. Considering I was the only student in the school that took my French classes seriously, and at first it felt like it was paying off, I showed him around, but he immediately got attention from the other girls. However, he showed no interest in them and would make witty comments in French to me about them. Over the next couple of weeks we became really close friends, and I was building up the courage to go and ask him out, but something crazy happened. Instead of me asking him out, he asked me out. I was so shocked because I had never received this kind of attention from anyone, not even my family. I was so excited that I immediately jumped at his offer to go on a date. He told me to dress nice because we were going somewhere fancy. We ended up going to McDonald's even though he was in a suit and I was in my nicest clothes. It was a hilarious experience and it felt like a dream. But this is where everything started to go downhill. I wish we weren't in such a cruel world where people found bullying fun, because the next couple of days a lot of the girls came and started asking me questions like, how did you end up with the hot boy, or doesn't he comment on your bad looks or acne? I just sat there frozen, unable to answer their multiple rude and condescending questions. Eventually, after a little while of them bullying me, I just sat there quietly until they left. That night I went home and asked my parents for acne cream. It was the only thing I had asked from them in years, and yet my mom especially just flat out refused because my dad needed the money to buy alcohol. I couldn't believe it. That whole night I was in my room crying, and my insecurity definitely reflected at school. My boyfriend started making comments about how I always look sad now and that I was always keeping my head down, but the things those girls said stuck with me, and maybe they were right. I didn't deserve my boyfriend. I became very isolated and I stopped talking to everyone altogether. Eventually, the boy that stole my heart with just one McDonald's date had moved on. This got me back onto my usual regime of just spending all my time coding and in my room. Eventually, I started reaching out to big tech companies because I wanted to get out of the terrible life I had here. I got an internship at one of the biggest tech companies, Google. I climbed the ranks to a point where I was essentially making a 7-digit salary. During this period of time I kept very low contact with my parents until they heard about the work I'm doing and started asking me to help pitch in with their rent, and then from there the requests just kept on piling on. It got to a point where I had bought them a 3-story luxurious house and even bought them a Ferrari. I kept on supplying them because currently I was making a lot, but that's when my mother asked me for the unthinkable. She told me that she wanted a Botox and facelift surgery. I reminded them of how they refused to pay for my acne cream and didn't help me fix my face, so I certainly wasn't going to help her fix her face, which was now filled with wrinkles. I told them how she cost one of the best relationships I had ever had, and now I would refuse to indulge I and her beauty expenses. My parents are now calling me a selfish brat that never even cared about them, but they weren't expecting what I would do next.